Well, at that time, the bike films were really in. There was, Easy Rider, Hell's Angels on Wheels, and Born Losers, all of the great bike films. And the bike film to us represented kind of a Western. And we couldn't afford horses, but we knew people with bikes. So that became our Western. We get on the bike and we could ride. And everybody had done single, two-wheel bikes. And one day, Eric Cord, our stunt gaffer, he says, "Oh, I know a guy named Jerry Boucher. He knows these Sidehacker things." And we're going, "What the hell is a Sidehacker? You hang on the side and you ride around?" So we went out and looked at him, and we went, "Wow, that's kind of cool," because one guy has to ride on the side and the bike and all the timing and stuff. So we made that film. We said, these are our bike guys. So,
what's with the training wheels? It's called a Sidehacker.
We built a whole movie around it. We had to pad out that first scene with Meadow, though.
What's it for?
Gus Draconis he'd done Sand Pebbles, West Side Story, a lot of Unsinkable Molly Brown. He was a great dancer and a very fantastic artist. And Gus came back from, I think he was shooting Sand Pebbles or something. And he came back and we were buddies and we said, let's make a movie. And so we sat down with Michael Layton and we started working the script up because we'd seen the Sidehackers and stuff. So Gus and I sat there with Michael and we actually came up with the script.
Interesting. Very interesting.
But stupid.
And then John Hall was our photographer. He used to be Raymar of the Jungle. John Hall was a big movie star back in the 40s. And he developed the thing called a phanoscope lens. And so it wouldn't go out of focus. So it was perfect for action because everything was in focus and it was wide. And we said, we got the first phanoscope lens like we're talking about, in Hollywood. If they don't know what to call something, they'll say, think up a new name. What would we call it today? Supercalifragilisticexpialidocious phanoscope. So they make up these big names. So the audience sits there and goes, I've never seen that. So the next thing you know, they would make up these names. So Sidehackers was the first film ever made in phanoscope, John Hall's famous lens.
I like this Sidehack bit. You join me on the circuit. I got some idea how to put this into my act.
And the next thing you know, Gus was directing his movie. And that's how it happens. I mean, in Hollywood, in China, they call it chi happens. This is Hollywood chi. You know what I mean? It's energy. If you got the energy, it seems to attract people to it. As long as you're positive about what you're doing, and it attracts people. And that's how everybody got connected with it.
I didn't get your name.
Rommel.
You're always looking for, what great name can I play? You're always looking at something to boost your ego. So at that time, I think we'd just seen one of those World War II films where Rommel, remember Raid on Rommel? And Richard Burton was working at the studio at the time, and he was making a tank film about Raid on Rommel, and Rommel was that great general. So I saw myself as this great general, Rommel, who could go out and save the world. So you make up fantasy crap in your mind about how you perceive yourself. So some guys will see themselves like, I gotta tell you, kid, I'm a big, tough guy. And so some people will play that role forever. And I think when you get into real acting, the fun of it is never playing the same role twice. And that's what got me on television, is because I noticed if you get a series, you're playing the same guy over and over and over and over. And I go, that's work.
What can we do for you?
Hey, it's
I got
Dick
a bike.
Shawn.
Need some repairing.
There's a funny thing in Hollywood. If you've been out of the spotlight for 15 minutes, you could go like this, Marlon Brando who? In other words, if you're not always on that, pushing that stuff all the time, people forget quickly because the next news comes up and stuff like that. Diane McBain has done films with Richard Burton. She did Ice Palace and all kinds of great films. Diane was my leading lady in that. Goldie Hawn was an extra because Gus Draconis, her first husband, was the director. So Goldie's standing out by the fence cheering us on. This is before she did Cactus Flower. So we're sitting there and going, and Goldie's our extra. Mike Pataki, tons of work.
Get your hands off me.
Oh,
You damn dirty ape.
Scream for a lover boy. Go ahead, scream. I want to hear you scream. Scream.
But all of these guys were serious actors that wanted to experiment. And what happens on an independent film, you're able to go in and experiment. You might get a script from a studio and it's very dried and the same old stuff, like the scream and run part. You've seen those roles before. When you do something like an independent, you can experiment. And I think that that's the most important thing. What we were doing, we were experimenting with, does this work? Does that work? Will this work? And all the actors, whoever they were in the film, Hoke Howe, a fabulous character actor, played my buddy in it, Richard Merrifield. And we all studied together. So you know how you develop kind of a group of buddies that you work with? Like John Cassavetes? He was always working with the same guys because we got used to each other and we could look at each other and go, "You got it, brother?" "Yeah, I got it." "Okay." So that's what we did. We kind of had a team that worked through. In fact, I got a review once that said Ross Hagen only uses his friends in a movie. Well, why would you use enemies?
Did you ever see Big J break a man's back?
No, but once I saw a bear drinking a soda.
I don't believe it. You hit me.
Yep, sure did.
Did you see what he did?
Yeah, I hit you.
You know, I was doing all my own stunts on the side. But as an actor, I've always learned one thing. There's stuntmen for a reason. In other words, in Hollywood, everybody has a position. And if you're starring in the movie, the worst thing you can do is go out there and crack your butt, okay, and hurt yourself, because then the movie's over. So Eric Cord, I told you about Eric, he's the stunt guy, and Eric is known for never hurting anybody. In other words, he would make sure that everything worked. He would never grandstand it. If he didn't know how to do something, he would get somebody that knew how to do it. That was the difference. We never got anybody hurt on Sidehackers because Eric Cord made sure that his stunt work went right. That's why he's still around and still doing his stunts after all these years.
Thanks, folks. I'll be here all week.
Directing that thing was a hoot because we had to get all the stunt people and all of this, and all of the people came in and worked for Zip because they just wanted to be in a movie, and they put their heart and soul into that film.
Come on, we only live through your achievements, please.
We weren't really hip to music, but at that time they were making music was a big deal in films. We got albums and everything, so we didn't really know what to do with it. But you would go and somebody would look at the film and say, "Oh, Mike Curb." Mike Curb is the one that did the music on it, and he had his music company. So he would come in and they would put scores to it, and then they would get a percentage of the music by putting the music in. So they actually made the music for nothing, but they got the publishing stuff like that from the royalties on the music. The music was more of an enhancement for the film, but the real music guys got in there and they were able to really enhance the piece, because at that time we weren't that sharp into all of the subtleties of filmmaking, because film is infinite. It grows with you. As you grow, the film grows.
Okay, but don't you start nothing. I'll be back in an hour or so.
Okay, I won't start nothing, I promise. We'll meet you at the Rock Quarry, okay?
We finished the film. We took it to Crown International, and there was Red Jacobs. He was the head of Crown at the time. And Red, he loved film. I mean, I don't know, he loved film and he loved young filmmakers. And he was always willing to give us a break. He knew we were idiots and that we didn't know how to negotiate a deal. We never knew points. We never knew anything. We just go, "We know how to make movies, man." And so I went in to show him Sidehackers, and we'd sold him a film called Hellcats before. And this was made on short ends, 16mm short ends. And when we went in to see Hellcats, he paid us outright for it. He just bought the film and he said, "You guys are the best filmmakers I've ever seen in my life." And we were all going, "We know how to make movies, baby." So the next one, we never got a percentage on Hellcats. So we said, next time we'll get a percentage. So when we finished Sidehackers, we showed it to Red. And he's sitting there with his cigar and he's going, "Well," he says, "I'll give you a $250,000 for Sidehackers. I'll buy you out in perpetuity." He always used the word perpetuity. And I said, "Red, no, we want a percentage." And he goes, "My God," he said, "you kids have learned the whole film business. I can't believe it. How sharp are you? You're so sharp." He says, "Okay, I'll give you 75% and I'll take 25. Well, in my idiot brain, 75 sounds bigger than 25. So I went, "Deal." I went back to everybody and I said, "We got a deal, 75-25. What he forgot to tell me is he took 25% of the gross from the first dollar. And our 75% we had to pay for his office, his secretary, his stamps, his Havana cigars, his trip to the Cannes Film Festival. So by the time we got through with our 75%, we had nothing left. And I went in and said, "Red, how come 75 is not as big as 25? He goes, "Those are called monkey points, son." I went, "Monkey points?" He said, "Yeah, producer's net. Don't ever take them again. So he was always teaching us about the business at the same time.
You're not talking!
And that hurts me. We never talk anymore. You're so distant. Where's the love?
Got nothing to say!
We'll come in, we'll have this great dramatic title, and then they'll come in and say, no, let's call it Sidehackers. So that was Mark Tenzer's job, to come in with a campaign and do the posters and get all that stuff ready for the marketing. But a distributor's very interesting because we make a film, but we don't know how to distribute it. So these guys, you have to take it to them, and then they have to figure out to tell their sales team, how can we sell this thing? Because basically what you're selling is popcorn, ice cream bars, hot dogs and stuff like that, because a movie's a place where you go to eat stuff and enjoy yourself when you're there. I mean, look at how popcorn, $5 for a bag of popcorn, please. The profit is more important on a bag of popcorn than on the film. That's basically it. It's a business. It's show business. And these guys, if you come out with a film that's too depressing and stuff like that, it won't sell a lot of popcorn. If you come out with Batman, Spider-Man, Spider-Woman, Sting-Woman, all of a sudden people come and they go, oh, I want to see that. I mean, we were all raised on it. The Thing, all of these weird monster movies and stuff, we loved them.